So today is a very special conversation for me. We've got Dean Curtis with us. Dean is someone that I've known for a number of years. He grew up in the same town as me. We went to the same school. And for me, he's someone that's achieved outsized success in his life and in his career. So in this conversation, we'll get to find out about the man behind the success and kind of how he's done it. So Dean, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you.
To start with, it'll be good to understand what is your definition of leadership?
Well, you do it every day. It's quite a hard question, isn't it? So the way I always frame that is be the leader that you always wanted. So I've had the privilege of working with so many good leaders over the years, and some bad ones. And I think you can learn from both, and you take the things that relate to your own style and make it yours. And there's a few things that I think are fundamental to the best leaders that I've seen. And I think the first one is authenticity. I think the challenge is a lot of people look up in their organizations or other organizations and think, what does a leader look like? And I think it's important that you become your own version of the leader that you want to be. And there's a couple of things there. I mean, it's got more fashionable in the last few years, probably since George Floyd, but I've always kind of spoken out a little bit on social issues, which leaders felt, I think previously 10 years ago was risky, and I do think it's an obligation to do that. I also, from my background in sport, take some things from that which make my style slightly different probably to an average leader. And if I look back, the bravery to do that and where I saw opportunity, I think was key to me being my own self. And I think too many people try and be the leader that they think that the organization wants rather than be. So authenticity is the first one for sure. The second one is role model behaviors and the things you want to see across your organization. The hardest bit, and the two that kind of go opposite each other, is the best leaders I've ever had do a couple of things. They make you feel very confident and supported, but at the same time, they challenge you. So like one of my bosses now, he's unbelievable at it. I always feel he has my back, feel supported, confident. I have the remit to do the job my way. He's never had to raise his voice or anything like that to me, but every time I'm with him, even if it's in a bar or something, I think, what's he going to ask me next? How's he judging me? My spine's slightly straight. And I think the balance between the two things is actually quite important to drive the best out of the people that work for you.
Yes, of course. And just out of interest, is that through kind of pressing questions or just kicking the tires on your ideas and figuring out where that growth opportunity is?
What, for yourself?
In terms of your conversation with your current boss and when he's currently stretching you all the time?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it lets me do things my way, and probably the type of character I am, the stretching bit is not really needed. It's more the reining in. But I guess, what he does is makes me feel supported in the things that we're going to do. So, it's important that you're allowed to make mistakes. Mm. And there's been times, and I won't talk about specific examples, but there are things where he's allowed me to do something, given me some advice. I've gone off and done it, and a year later said, could have told you that wasn't going to work, but he's allowed me to have the learning opportunity. And early in my career as a leader, because I wanted my teams and businesses to do so well, perhaps I might have dived in more and helped them do the job and avoid the mistake. And there's a big advantage in allowing failure sometimes, but the key is knowing what the things you can't fail at,
of course,
versus the things where failure is acceptable, and you can use that as a learning opportunity. So take that. He's phenomenal at it, and it takes a lot of courage, and I'm working at it.
It's a real skill. Okay, cool, thanks. And so going all the way back, and this is kind of, I'm genuinely curious about this aspect. So growing up in Malden, if you think about your early life, early career, formative years, so to speak, are there specific leadership role models that you had through that period?
I'm a great believer in life. You can take something from every person you meet, whoever they are, whatever they do. There's always a quality about somebody that is influential to you. And I genuinely mean every single person on the planet. So I've been fortunate enough to have so many good people around me. My group of friends from the school that we went to are just phenomenal. I genuinely believe they kind of made my life. There's different things about each of them. And as you get older, you kind of work out what that is. And if we're in the age of AI, and I say to people that I work, it's our strengths and our vulnerabilities that make you. And if AI created the average version of all of your friends, you probably wouldn't like them because it's the extremities of the qualities and the strengths they have, but also their vulnerabilities and their idiosyncrasies that probably annoy you sometimes, right? That make that person the person. And so I think everybody that comes into your life influences you in some way. And I am very, very careful about who's in my circle and who I, both at work and in my home life, and who I'm influenced. I give my time to anyone. It's my job to, really. But the people that are close to me, I guess, are hugely selective. So in my personal life, my friends, obviously my parents, and then I was in football as well. So I had some excellent role models there. And then as I started to go into the workplace, I had some brilliant bosses, and I take things from each of them. I remember as a young lad, I worked for HSBC Investment Management, and there was and my manager there, unfortunately, he passed away, a chap called Rod Juniper, and the impact that he had on the team. We were quite a young team, and the people have gone on to do such amazing things, honestly, and it was because of his leadership. And the thing I always took from him is he would never expect anybody to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself, and he was a role model. So every quarter in those days, before the world was digital, we used to have these printed client valuations we had to bind, and we'd be there late at night after we'd closed the quarter out with trading and stuff, and he'd get pizza in, he'd come and sit with us, and we'd just do it all together.
Amazing.
And it created a spirit, and I think that's really important. And some of the best teams have that. The New Zealand rugby team have a value which is called sweep the sheds. Oh. So they still have, a delegated member clean up the dressing room after every game themselves. So that, we are self-sufficient. We can take care of ourselves. And I think that, so that's just one example. And as I go through my life, different people give you those different leadership lessons. And it is, I say to a lot of people, leadership is both a privilege and a responsibility. And I feel where I am in my career now, I have a responsibility to share what I've learned from those great people. And it would be very selfish of me if I kind of went away and reduced my life and sat in a coffee shop and read the newspaper every morning. I think that sharing that with what people have shared with me is important because it's good stuff.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, your personality, you're more someone that needs to be held back than pushed forward. So when did you realize you had that level of drive and ambition? Or are there specific moments, or can you think back to that?
I don't think it's inherent in anyone, by the way, right? I think it's given. You kind of find it yourself. You have to find your purpose and your passion and your belief, because even the most moments, we all have bad days, right? We all turn up and you think, we're not at it today. And that's when your purpose and what you do every day really matters. And it's also when the people around you matter, because that's what good teams do. When you're not totally at it, no one can be their best every single day, right? You can try to be. And so my background, we went to the same school. My parents divorced when I was 10 years old. I haven't got a degree. When I was doing after a bit of football, I did A-levels and didn't particularly enjoy them, to be honest with you, but I managed to do okay. And as I was applying for university, someone from football said, was working in the city, and I ended up starting my career in banking, Rothschilds, and then HSBC. And so I still say I don't really know what I want to do when I grow up. It's a bit like one of those cartoons where they sleepwalk and you walk out the window and a crane picks you up and puts you on a plank that's falling. But I do believe that is intentional, right, from a performance perspective, where you worry about your own development and creating opportunities for yourself rather than here's the path and here's where I want to go. But the one thing that background has given me, I've worked with some wonderful people, but many of them had very, very privileged background and education, which I didn't have. I went to a good school with good people, but it wasn't the likes of some of the universities and schools of the people I work with. But one thing that I've never been outworked, ever. And that motivation is important. And I guess there's a few things that it comes from, and it's actually got stronger as I've got older. As you know, I lost my younger sister 11 years ago, you know, and I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, but every day is a gift. And one thing I hate, and it's not even for the people I lead, is I don't want anybody to be there because they're taking a paycheck.
Of course.
You know, life is short and you have to do what drives you, and because that's the only way you're going to get to your best.
Yeah.
And I genuinely, if I was a billionaire, I would do a similar thing to what I'm doing. And that motivates me, right? So, and that's where my passion and my purpose is. And I often see people that when they stop work without a purpose to go to, they become ill. And I've had a teacher at school, my geography teacher, Mr. Came, he you know, did some extra lessons with me A-levels. He did all sorts of extra curriculum, wrote books. And as soon as he retired, he very quickly became ill. And I've worked with a lot of people in banking where, you know, from the age of 18, they went to the city every day to 65. They're in the office at 7 a.m. We're probably up at 5, finish at 6:30 at night, home at 8. I've done that for 40, 45 years of their life. And then all of a sudden, they stop. And there was you got to keep the canoe paddling. I think someone always needs something to chase because it's the purpose of life. And so for me, it's purpose where that drive comes from. And if you haven't got drive, you've got to look at the environment you're in and why. You know, is what you're doing mean enough to you?
Yeah.
And do the people around you motivate and inspire you? Because that's important, because you can't always motivate yourself.
Of course. It's a different style of leadership, I think, that when you refer to, you know, you don't want people to be taking a paycheck, but for them, not for you as the leader. I think that's a unique perspective, right? Most people in a leadership role would think, well, I want them to be in this because they're going to drive a better outcome for me personally, not I want them to be in this because it's better for them as an individual.
Yeah, well, that's the only way you can be your best, right? As an individual, you have to, leadership 101, it's the same for anybody. You have to be authentic and the best version of you. That's really hard to do, by the way, in a workplace. We all conditioned in education to get the same school bag, pass the same exam, do the same things, dress the same way. Society makes us try and be the same, but it is the differences where the strengths are in business. You know, and the statistics say diverse, inclusive teams perform better, innovate better, and deliver better results. So it's important you allow that. But the fundamental 101 is you've got to believe in what you're doing. And we're fortunate in most of the countries we operate in, they're good countries. Just, you know, we're in the UK now, right? You've got plenty of opportunity. No one's really doing a job because they have to.
Cool.
They might be doing it because they need the money, but there's opportunity to change compared to most people around the world. By very definition, we're all in the top, listening to this, we're in the top % of the world. You know, we've got the opportunity to go and do something that you want to do. Yeah, exactly, because every day you waste. And so for me, it's a two-way, it's quid pro quo. I'd hate to think someone's coming in and doing something every day just because it's a job, because we don't need to do that. Nobody needs to do that.
Yeah.
But the other part of that, as a business leader, I can't get them to be their best and to do the best for the team if they don't believe in what they're doing. And so you have to be in. And I actually say that at town halls when I take businesses on and stuff. I say, look, I actually say this, life is short.
Yeah.
If you're here and you don't think this is the right thing for you, then maybe it's not. Let's have a conversation. And that's fine, by the way. Of course. Because it's best for both of us. And I've had people after the town hall come up to me, Dean, I listened to what you said. You're right. Used to be a trader. This isn't for me. And they've left the organisation. And you know what? That's better for both parties. So
good outcome. It's really interesting. So when I think about that from my own perspective, running a business, you know, you do see some people coming into the organisation, especially at a more junior level, really kind of figuring out, is this the right organisation, industry, job type for them, right? And there is always that immediate period where they're kind of feeling their way into it.
Yeah.
So at that point, I guess they're probably less driven for the long term, right? They don't know whether it's the right thing for them. They don't know whether it's going to kind of really set them alight every day.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I think experience is important. So I often do a lot, and I got some opportunities through people I knew early in my life where I think it's important for people to get different experiences. So particularly when you're at school and education, work experience is important. But quite often people go the easy route. I'll go and work with my dad, or do you know what I mean? That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
But you want to get different experiences and build it up. And then it's important to understand what you like. And I guess there's a couple of principles there, right? And there is a very long book, but called Second Mountain. But the principle of that is the first mountain in life is we're conditioned to do well. I want to be a CEO, a pop star, a football player, whatever it is. And you climb the first mountain. And typically on the mountain, one of a few things happens. You or someone you love gets ill, or something happens that gives you a different perspective on life, or you actually get to where you wanted to be and think, do you know what, it wasn't what I thought. And then you begin the journey on the second mountain, which is kind of about purpose. And typically the best purposes are driven around servitude to others based on us as human beings, right? And being part of something bigger. And most of us like to be part of winning teams, and we want to attach our cart to something that is bigger than us. And I think that is powerful. So I think there's one lens there, and that again comes to purpose and belief. And purposes have changed, but the good thing is purpose has got much more important to the younger working generation now, and that's a good thing,
without doubt.
And if you look at looking after the world we're in, and as businesses, our responsibility for the environments that we operate in, all of those things are the right things, because it is corporate that can make the biggest difference over governments and other things. And I think we have a responsibility there. And the second thing is I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a Japanese concept called ikigai, of course. And it's what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for, and how those four things kind of intersect. And I do think it's important to look at the qualities of your job that you're doing and what you like, and kind of take you on a journey to do the things that you like to do.
Yes.
But it's also important to challenge yourself and be uncomfortable, because that's where growth happens. So if I took my own career, when I started in banking and trading, I wanted to be a trader. I sat behind screens. Sitting behind screens was really boring. Buying a bit of BP, selling a bit of share, whatever it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I think it's a problem. At school, it's a big wide world out there. You can do anything you like. That's not particularly helpful, is it?
Right.
And so I guess the bits that I liked about the job was going out and pitching for new business and winning customers, so sales. And the other bit I liked about it was communication. So I studied communication at a communications consultancy for a number of years, and I really became infatuated with sales. And then as I went through my banking career, I went back into football for a while. I was a coach, and then I went and I took a lot from that. So my leadership style is quite different, I think, because it's based around performance. Business is infatuated with results, hit your target. And in football, you would never go into a dressing room and tell a group of people they need to win. It's like me telling you not to worry, or me telling my kids they have to pass an exam. Let's hit your number, Luke. Yeah. Right? It's useless information. So we have a saying at work: performance is doing the things you need to do to get the results you want. Focus on the performance and the things that matter, and the score takes care of itself. I'm always judged on numbers. I'm ultimately judged on numbers, but an infatuation with that doesn't help me. Of course. Doesn't help anybody. And that's what you mentioned earlier about my current boss, who's unbelievable, is he gives me the freedom to focus on performance, and that helps me deliver better results. And that's how it's gone for the last decade. So I hope it continues, right? So there's that from football. And then I went back into banking, and during that there was a lot of stuff on regulation and compliance, and online stuff was just becoming more popular. And and I suppose the phrase I use is just go and sit at the right poker table. Yeah. Right. You want to be in an environment doing the things you love in a market that's growing, where opportunity is prevalent. So this was like 2003. I was Investec Bank, and I got offered, they wanted someone that was networked in the banks. It was after 9/11, and in a risk business that wanted to sell anti-money laundering products. And I thought compliance, which was impacting my life in banking, it's online, there's opportunity here. And I took a change in industry to move to data and tech, essentially. And I specialized in the data world around anti-terrorist financing, anti-money laundering and fraud. And I did that for 14 years. And so I never knew that I wanted to go that way, but I kind of took the performance of the things that I enjoyed and where I wanted to stimulate and grow, and it take me on a path. And then 4 years ago, I was still in a risk business in our current organization, RELX, which is FTSE 11 at the moment. And and then my bosses said, we'd love you to run businesses you know nothing about. Shish. And it was a bit of genius really from them. But I then had to rely on people call them soft skills, human skills, because they're not soft, they're the most important skills, right? So I had to then rely on my leadership skills to run the business, because I was no longer the subject matter expert in the business. And before, if someone spoke at a conference or to the media, it would have been me. Yeah. So I wasn't the expert. So now as a leader, I have kind of 6 CEOs report to me, and we, businesses, energy, chemicals, aviation, real estate, tax. They're all different types of agriculture, all different types of subject matter, but the principles are the same. And so my job is I call it turning a team of leaders into a leadership team. And again, my approach from that comes from sport. So in football or rugby or any team sport, if you sit in the dressing room, it doesn't matter whether you like someone or not, you're conditioned in however long the game is, you're all going to win and lose together. Business isn't like that. And every table you sit round, people understand strengths and weaknesses. Marketing's a bit rubbish, they'll be gone in a year. Right, but that happens in every team. You have that acceptance. Now, we're all strong at some things, weaker at others. But how that team works together is key. It's called mutual accountability, right? And it's one thing that the most elite teams have, is to have a group of people that put the team before the individual. Really easy to say, it's very, very rare.
Yes, because you can even have teams within the overall team that put the team before the individual, but then on a broader basis, you've got teams that compete with other teams, right?
Exactly. And then you're also in a corporate organization, a big corporate organization, you're actually in part of more than one team.
Of course.
Right? So you've got these dynamics going on about your role in the team, knowing your others. And that's a tough thing. Understanding the people you work with is really important. And it's something that's actually reduced, I think, during COVID and remote working. I've worked from home for 16 years. I've always, flexible working, I believe in, but you have to take the time to connect and understand. And that doesn't happen on video meetings as well as it does in person.
So is it about personal relationships, you think, or is it about standards?
It's both. It's both, but the personal relationships drive the standards. So you don't have to like the people you work with. Fortunately, I do most of the time, because it's intentional. It's important to me, the people I work with. But as leaders, it's your job to set the standard. And I think that a lot of bad leaders drop standards. And your job as a leader is to keep the standards where you want them. And I think that's always a tough balance. Your standards need to be at a level where it stretches everybody, but it can't be too far that people can never see themselves getting to where the standard is, because you'll get a level of disengagement.
Yeah.
So I think, if where you set the standards is important. Again, football taught you that. Sir Alex Ferguson would stop a training session if the standard wasn't what he wanted it to be, because bad repetition counts too negatively.
Of course.
So the quality that you're performing at is important. And it's a bit like a relationship where people say things and do things. When that barrier comes down, you can never put it back up.
Yeah.
So standards are important, but the biggest thing is the relationships in the team. And my view is the best teams have a formal contract. First of all, they all have a purpose or a vision they buy into. And beneath that, they have a set of values to which everybody subscribes.
Right.
And we're intentional about what we do then. They don't come from me as the leader. I can't tell someone they're going to be courageous. They have to be agreed from the team. And then when we turn up, I know today, these are what I need to do. This is what I get from Lou.
Yeah.
And I think all good teams have that. There's a wonderful book, actually. I think it's the best leadership book I've ever read, called Legacy, by a chap called James Kerr, New Zealand rugby team. And again, that is exactly what the book is about. And I think it's the only thing you need to do before you turn up at Sandhurst is read the book.
Right.
It's a phenomenal book, honestly. It's really good.
Yeah, and I suppose back to the concept of your kind of performance-focused concept, we have a saying internally, look after the inputs and the outputs look after themselves. What I think is really challenging about that is that you focus too much on one aspect of that and the other one seems to drop. It's about constantly finding that balance. For instance, if you focus too much on quality inputs, the inputs overall tend to drop quite significantly, and that then reduces the size of the file overall, right?
Yeah.
So it's that constant balance. Is that something that you are managing on a daily basis within your organization?
Yeah, so targets are important, right? So that's the destination of where you're traveling to on the journey. But the things you do to get there are more important. So having a focus on performance and results in equal measure, I think, is important. The thing I try and do is set different targets, right? What's gold, silver, and bronze,
right?
Because the challenge that you get, particularly with people that are having a tough time and not confident, is they manage to the number. I've employed thousands of salespeople. The best ones are never the ones that interview and say they're going to hit their target. The real good ones are the ones that are going to maximize the opportunity in the territory they're given, not just hit an arbitrary number that someone's given to them. But the milestone is an important one, right? Because that's what the inputs go towards. So, the performance things get you there. How have I mapped my market? What's the quality of my scripts and engagement? If you're in sales, how do I engage with customers, take them on the journey? Can I get meetings well enough? What am I doing in the meetings? Is it proposals? And you can break down where the performance needs improvement and where the performance is great. But that's all to get an outcome.
And the outcome becomes the benchmark.
Yeah. But it's very rarely in businesses I actually look at a pipeline, because you never win 70% of a deal. You either win the whole thing or nothing. So it's breaking down the performance of the pipeline to say, what are each individual person good at? And that's where teams become important in sales. The best teams that the best commission plans actually in sales have had a team element to them. Of course, where people can take the best of what they do.
Yeah, drives that collaboration. And it's so clearly there's a theme throughout this conversation around how you take sports psychology into the business world. And going back to what you said earlier, clearly you've not got a degree, so you skipped out on universities. Do you think, looking back now, is sports kind of your replacement for that?
I don't know about replacement, because I think there's people that are at university that have gone to university that have similar views with me. I do believe I've learned more about certain things in the world of sport than business. Business does some things very, very well and better than sport, and I think sport does things better than business. And it's taking those, but I certainly think a performance mindset is the right one for individuals in life away from business, right? How do I wake up every day, try and be the best version of who exactly I am, and be a little bit better today than I was yesterday? And over a period of time, that just adds up. In any given Sunday, Al Pacino called it inches in Formula One, McLaren called it tenths in British cycling, Brailsford called it marginal gains, right? And what you get from that, actually, it's not just about the vanity of being better, it's that level of satisfaction and fulfillment that I think is important. Because when all's said and done, I do many, many wonderful things I'm fortunate and privileged to, right? But I could be mowing the grass or digging a patio out, and when you put your head on the pillow at night, you feel satisfied. Do you know what? I've had a good day today. That's really what life's about, isn't it?
It's unique though, right? I mean, everybody can say it, but there aren't that many people that do it. So what enables you to do that consistently, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year?
I think it's habits, and it is, there's a saying, are you interested or committed? People can sit and say, doesn't it sound good? I'm interested, but you've got to be committed to it. And that's where, that's the difference in high performance, right? In actual fact, elite performance. So when I started studying human performance like 20 years ago, when I've had the opportunity to meet different people, and that could be Sir Alex Ferguson or Simon Sinek, or the question, I try and ask them two questions. What makes the best the best? What makes the best teams the best teams? In terms of what makes the best, the answers are quite similar, and it's really weird. It's actually boring. They are absolutely the things that everybody can do that few are willing. In the world of football, if you take Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, look at the end of their career now, how they manage themselves. You never see them coming out of nightclubs, bottles of vodka, sparklers everywhere, ice baths every day. Every professional footballer can have an ice bath every day. Very few do. because it's hard. But it's easy and it's simple and everybody can do it. And I genuinely believe that high performance is about doing the few people that end up doing the few things that everybody can do and few are willing. If you look at every Roger Federer, they're boring. And there is an element of discipline needed in that for you to fulfill your potential. And discipline is a key word, because it's what joins your intentions with your behavior.
Without a doubt, you can sit, right? You look around and you see those people that are consistent and purposeful in what they do. I suppose my question there is, if you look at it from a Messi and Ronaldo perspective, they've got tons of coaches around them, nutritionists, people advising them on how to live their day-to-day life. For somebody who maybe doesn't have that, how do you figure out those things that you need to be super disciplined around?
I mean, first of all, I think what works for each individual is different. So you have to find your formula for you. The key is what you really need is people that support you with the discipline, people around you. And I've got some really bad habits that I want to change. Don't get me wrong, I don't turn up every day and everything's on point. Probably drink a little bit too much alcohol, eat a little bit too much sugar, don't sleep enough. There's a million and one things, but it's a continual journey around, probably don't drink enough water. How do you evolve yourself as part of that performance cycle? And some of that comes from being around people that want to do the same thing as you. You want people around you that want to get better. And again, we started saying you learn something from everyone. I had a taxi driver who used to take me to Heathrow, proper East End guy, great guy. And he used to say to me, Dean, people are either drains or radiators, right? They either suck the life away from you or they give you energy and input. And it's true. And so it's hard. If you're in a bad environment with bad people around you, I'm not saying blame the environment, but you've got to do something about it. And it's very, very hard to remain and stay disciplined in those environments as an individual. I've got 3 kids, right? I've got chocolate all over my house. It's really, really hard when I'm tired at night not to eat the chocolate.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's that constant compromise that you have to either be willing to accept and do it purposefully or avoid. So in terms of, if you draw that down into kind of specific habits, for you personally, have your habits that you kind of follow every single day, have they evolved over the years?
They have evolved and they change, and sometimes they've got better and sometimes they've got worse, depending on what the habit is, right?
But there's a set of principles there.
And the way that I define that is, and by the way, I do have people around me that help me with this stuff, right? So in business, I have a head of performance.
Right.
I used to run a performance psychology business in sport, work with and I employ sports psychologists in our business to work with people. So in the last 5 weeks, 2,500 people have had 5 sessions on their personal performance. And at work, half of your performance really is driven by your physical, mental and emotional state. We can't perform at work when we have other things going on in our organisation, in our lives, which ultimately happen, right? There's nothing we can do about that. We need to be there to support people, all of those sorts of things. So the types of habits for me and the way that I frame it is, when you're at your best, how has it gone? How did you prepare? What did you do? Who are you with? What did you eat? What did you drink? So my typical days, clearly you have a good night's sleep. I don't need tons of sleep, but it's actually got more as I've got older, I would say. But I probably need between 6 and 7.5 hours sleep. I wake up, I train and exercise first hour. Right. I then shower, do a few emails, have a healthy breakfast. Nutrition is an important part of that. And then I crack on in my day.
Every day?
Most days when I can, yeah. I mean, my training in the last 2 years hasn't been as disciplined, but I reckon over the years, most days I've trained.
Yeah.
And that's important to me because I sit at a desk most of the time like this, right? So that physical part of that, and it's important when you feel good, it makes a huge difference. And it's strange, a while ago with a sports psychologist, I did a piece of work where I wore a proper medical heart rate monitor for a period of time in different scenarios when I travel and fly and when I was presenting and stressful periods for 4 days. And what's amazing is when you're doing things you love, you almost go into a recovery mode.
course.
And when you do things that challenge you, the strain and stress on your body is actually more than it is when you're exercising.
Yeah.
And so how you manage those periods, because you've got to do both, right? Growth happens when you're challenged and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You have to challenge yourself. That's how you get better. But at the same time, you also need to be confident, build on the things you're good at and the things you like, because it's where you thrive and perform your best. And I think how you organize your life to get both of those. So, in terms of habits, obviously nutrition, hydration, exercise. I'm quite bad with my phone.
Right.
And that's not a healthy habit. So I'm trying to get my screen time down. And especially first thing in the morning, last thing at night, you're running a global business, what's coming on the email, it becomes an addiction, right? It's a negative habit. I'm standing in the queue, I'm going to check this. And I have that. So no, perfection doesn't exist, right? But we can try and get there. We're never going to get there. So I just look at those key types of habits and
do you measure them?
I do, sadly. I do. I try each week to do 4 resistance weight sessions if we're training. One thing I've been bad at for a few injuries over the last 2 or 3 years is cardio. So I'm a big believer in resistance training for health, but at the same time, you need to kind of look after your heart. And I used to hate running and football, but cardio I think is important. I need to do a bit more there. But my probably the biggest vice is sugar.
Right.
Love sweets, love ice cream, and trying to make sure that I manage that well. Because what I do typically find is in a stressful day in the middle of the afternoon, I'll eat something like that, and then I get this spit, and then my performance will drop off.
Right. Yeah.
And you just get to know it, right?
Of course.
And even the foods your body gets on with and not. So yeah, I do measure some of them sadly, and that helps me stay honest, I guess.
Of course. And so last piece from me is just to understand it. Obviously running a global organization, you've got these habits that underpin everything that you do on a daily basis. You're very purposeful in terms of the way that you behave and who you are. What are your kind of general stress levels on a kind of daily basis, would you say?
It's a tough one, and I'm probably not qualified to talk about it, but I do think that the word stress is associated with most people as a negative word.
Of course. Pressure is a privilege, right?
Yeah. And my type of stress most of the time is a privilege stress. Physically, you couldn't lift your arm up in the morning when you woke up without stress, right? That's physiologically correct. So we all need a bit of stress in our life, and where I've seen it go wrong with family members and other things is where they've avoided stress and avoidance techniques to stress. The key is learning to manage it. And if you know the things that you can do to manage your stress, it might be meditation or breathing, or mine's actually exercise. That's the thing that takes me away from, and it always has been, from training. I don't relax very well. And learning how to manage that stress and recovery. And weirdly, it's the recovery bit started there. That's the bit that I work on, because I had that work ethic when I was younger. I try and maintain it. I think if I reduce it, it's a house of cards, it's going to crumble. It's a confidence thing, really. And those recovery periods where I don't have as much on, I almost feel like I'm cheating.
Yeah.
And sometimes that recovery period is really, really important to get ready for the next best thing. Cool. It's a bit like an Olympic cycle, right? You don't run your fastest time in the quarterfinal. So sustainable performance is really important.
Mm. How do you put it into practice, right? And I think the way that you're doing it. Have you always had this?
So so the story to that is it's a deep story. So I was the first non-US salesperson for Wolters Kluwer. Right. Outside of the US, their financial services business did really well, sold a load. We bought a business, and it's like, who's going to run it? Dean. So I was an MD at 29 years old, and I had a coach, and she said to me, Dean, you're too nice.
Yeah.
You look nice, you sound nice, you are nice. With nice, you lose accountability.
Yeah.
So she taught me a variety of different techniques, even the language I used to use, because I was talking to someone, I want them to like me.
Yeah.
And I still have that, right? But of thousands of people, I know 20% of them think I'm a complete idiot all of the time, right? And I can't do anything about that because I'm either driving performance, they're underperforming, I've made decisions they don't agree with.
Yeah.
And so I try and be like, so I'd use words like think, perhaps, try, maybe. I was softer in my tone. I learned how to, if I wanted to put a point across in the meeting, I'd lean forward and say, look, what we got to think about is, and influence the meeting. And to the point where as I got a little bit older and bigger, physically, and I had to almost dial that down a little bit because it could be intimidating, right?
Yeah.
Eye contact, all of that sort of stuff helps you influence the environment you're in. So she asked me to do this. She said, you need a personal framework. So again, it's linked to authenticity and what I spoke about.
Love it.
You have to know what you stand for as a leader and your values, and ultimately the people that are around you. So I won't tell everyone mine is passion and belief, but very soon they'll work it out. When I stand there, life is short, in the town hall, that's my indication to them is you better believe in what you're doing or this is going to be really difficult for you. And well, it is. It's just how it is. So anyway, so she's, and I struggled with it. I had a month to do it. 3 days. And funny enough, I just bought the coach 16, 17 years later back. So I've done one of those every 2 years.
Right.
I've just brought the coach back into the business to do some work. You need your standard as a person because the saying is that you teach people how to treat you. Wherever you are in life, you need to create the contract with the people around you, your wife, your kids. I'm going to take your phone away from you. Oh, I love them so much. I give the phone back. You do that 3 times, I think, I'll give it taken away, but I know I'm going to get it. So it's exactly it, right? It is about standards and in your life. So anyway, I've said, Claire, I'm struggling, and she on the phone, she said, look, imagine, what do you want people to say about you at your funeral? What was Dean like as a person? And that's how I came up with my first set of values.
Nice.
And they've changed. In my late 20s, early 30s, they were achievement driven and goals. And then as you started to get, well, defined success, but corporate success, it was then about, I'm in a really privileged position. How do I give back?
Love it.
So, sit on the board of a few charities. How do I influence other people's careers? Do some earlier career stuff, low socioeconomic all of the sort of stuff. So we've got a low socioeconomic background program I started in our work. All these sorts of things become part of my values and play. And weirdly now, part of mine is my values have changed and reduced because I've so much pull on myself. I'm actually not a selfish person, so I don't get much time for me. And there's an element of simplicity that I want to put into my life now. Because it's got so complex based on people pulling me everywhere. So they change. And then weirdly, about 2 years after I did that, my sister was terminally ill and her kids were 1 and 3 years old. And I helped her write a letter to her kids. And it was deep. And it's exactly the same piece of work, right? God forbid you have one last conversation with the people you love. What do you tell? And then my boss at the time was a Canadian Jew based in New York. And he actually said to me, he said, Dean, we do this in my religion. So we write something called an ethical will, where we don't just give our physical possessions and things of value to the people we love. We give them their thoughts on life. And if they want to use them, they can use them. If they don't, they don't.
Whoa.
And so I ended up writing a letter to my kids that 2 people have. And it says what your beliefs are in life.
Love it.
And when you do that sort of work, the most courageous journey, before you know where you're going, you have to know who you are. Most people can't get there. It's tough. It's the hardest piece of work anybody does. Who are you? Not what do you want to be? Where do you want to go? I want to be a CEO. I want to do this. I want the business to be this big. That's not. Who are you? It's a tough piece of work.
Well, I said it to you the other day, right? It's the highest performing people that I know. They all have that. They all have that real clarity of kind of what they stand for. What matters to them. And then they're religious about it day in, day out.
And it helps people relate to them though, because they're consistent. If a leader, you change all of the time and you're a chameleon, A, you're weak, but B, nobody knows what to give you.
No, definitely.
Because you're here, there. There's a really good exercise that they do in the Richmond Tigers Aussie Rules team. It's called Triple H.
Right.
So as a team, one of the leaders that works for me, or managers in the business, he started doing it with the energy team that he runs. And what Triple H is you introduced the concepts, and they did this at Richmond Tigers. They had a terrible season in 2015.
Right.
2016, they rose to fame and they won premierships. And it was through the bonding of the team personally.
Really?
And what Triple H is when you're ready, you can stand in front of the group and you share your 3 H's. So who's your hero?
Yeah.
What's your hardship? And what's your highlight of your life? And it's so powerful. And weirdly, it was
because it shows vulnerability. Is that
it does? So there's the famous story that I know here is the South African rugby team ready before the Japan World Cup.
Right.
So Sia Khaleesi, first black captain, they all turned up. Now this happens in business. All get together for the first time, 3-4 years before the World Cup in Japan.
Yeah.
This is what they're going to do. Now most teams would run out onto the pitch and start training.
Course.
The first 2 days, they it makes me a bit emotional, this bit. They stayed in a room and just got to know each other. And one of the things they had to do was bring 6 pictures,
right,
that represented their life. Okay, and then you had to talk through the pictures, and they went number orders. And Mapimpi, the guy that scored the try against England in the final, he bought 6 pictures of himself.
Right.
Right, and everyone was laughing, bearing in mind it's rugby.
Yeah.
I mean, narcissist, you bought 6 pictures of yourself, and then he tells his story. And his story was, I was brought up in this town in Africa. My dad wasn't around. I just had my mum. My mum had cancer and passed away. My younger sister then died. My brother was electrocuted stealing wire up a pylon. He said, I don't have any pictures of my family. This is who I am. So if you look at their shirts in the final, Google this, and you Rasmus, the second row player who was the coach of the team, Google it, and you'll listen to him talk, and he's crying. All of the South African rugby players in the shirt in the final, in the gold numbers on their back, had pictures of the people they love. The Pimpis didn't have any; they were just a number.
Really?
It's like really powerful.
Yeah.
But for him to share that story, he literally said, I don't have my family, you're my family now. And they reckon the impact that had on the first 2 days of camp over the next 4 years and why they won the World Cup. Like our sales organisation is a perfect example. Like we've got people in our sales organisation come from all different backgrounds, but we hire them as second jobs intentionally. They're always second jobs.
Yeah.
They know where the phone is on the desk. They've been in corporate life. Now I'm going to show them what to do with it.
Yes.
And create a greenhouse for talent that just makes them fly.
Yeah. So question from my own perspective on that though. So what happens if you've got that level of those behaviours, but the capability isn't there? Is that on you as a leader to develop that, or do the two things have to go hand in hand? And it comes to a question around K2 Planet actually.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, there's a capability gap in certain bits of the organisation.
There's a couple of things. It depends on if you think that they can get there. I have a big thing genuinely where I will take will over skill because I think you should coach skill.
Yeah.
The hardest thing is passionately. If someone gives me everything they've got, I've got them.
High level of will, then
There is a bit where I've had a few occasions, and they've been the hardest occasions in my career, where the organisations have outgrown the person.
Yeah.
So they have a ton of will, but by putting them in a role, they're actually letting the organisation down.
Nailed that.
Right. And what you can't do, you have to, as a leader, make a decision because you can't let people down.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. You know,
again, it's that concept of it's not them, it's you.
Yeah. And it's
your responsibility to look forward to them.
Yeah. And you can create the environment, and you need to be able to support and give them everything they've got.
Yeah.
But the other bit that I think is important is the balance between developing the people you've got and creating and bringing in eminent people that have done it before. And it's a bit like a football team, right? I remember playing it wasn't that long ago, it was only 6 or 7 years ago, local team asked me to play for them in the quarterfinals of this Essex Cup on a Sunday. And I played, and we played in the semis, and we got into the final. Now I knew this team was bad, really. It was. They'd never been in cup finals and all the rest of it before. But but they were a good bunch of lads, and they worked hard. And I'm not saying they won it because I joined the team. I actually thought they did the wrong thing because people that got them there lost their place because this old dip like me. But
Dino turns up.
Yeah. But there's certain things, and I knew 5 or 6 players from the other team. Right. And they were good players.
Yeah.
And you're in the dressing room before the game, and I use this example now, not to be one-on-ones, and it was quiet. Everyone was nervous. They'd kind of already lost, right? And you take your suit and your tie off and you put it on the peg. And I said to the guy next to me, I didn't even really know him. I said, put your towel on your suit. And he's like, why would you do that? And I said, well, because when we come in and everyone's spraying champagne everywhere, your suit gets shit all over.
Yeah.
Right? And all I'm doing is like showing the eminence that we've done it before.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all right, I've got this. We're not all trying to find out what new is. You need a couple of people that have done it. And if you look at the best teams and the things that have happened, look at Inter Miami, just won a cup. Messi's turned up.
Yeah.
Right? And he's not won it on his own.
No, of course.
But what he's done is brought a level of belief
to
people around.
So true.
It's like, oh my God, like we can do this. And so I do think injection of capability is important, particularly in transformation. So you need people that have been where you're going, but then you also need to take people with you. And my biggest weakness really is I want to get there too quick. So I'm better off going slower and taking more people with me.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. If you think about your career holistically, how do you generally measure success, or how would you encourage others to measure success?
I think it goes to what we talked about, really, the difference between performance and results. And unfortunately, and particularly in like kind of corporate America, so to speak, most people measure success by outcomes. What's my title? What's my salary? How many people have I got under me? What's the revenue? And sometimes that can be really unhelpful. And I see so many people take opportunities because of the milestones. Whereas I think if you focus on the performance of your career and the things you want to collect to get to where you want to go, of course, those things are important along the way, but they become an outcome of your performance rather than, and it's good to have the milestones, but not the actual driver. And sometimes I shut down with people's sole infatuation and how they measure success is through their title. And it's just a nonsense, right? And so I try and look at my career of what are the things I need to collect and do for myself in terms of skills and development. And over a period of time, that creates the opportunity that I'm looking for, really.
Of course.
And my two biggest mistakes have been, in my career have been when I've taken two opportunities for money. And one of them, it probably took me 3 years to recover from. And I won't do that anymore. You know, I want to stay true to the values of what I enjoy, who I am, where I want to go, but collect the things that I need along the way rather than let those outcomes take me on a different path, which they have done in the past. So my advice to people is always focus on the performance of your career and the results will take care of itself. And I treat it.
Yeah, it resonates so much. I mean, we talk to a lot of recruitment business owners, and the key question that you always get at the start of the conversation is, how many people have you got? And we always laugh. It's such a useless metric. It didn't really tell you anything, right?
Yeah.
People just get infatuated by the number. Comes back to what we were saying earlier. Look after the inputs and the outputs look after themselves. Focus on the outputs. And
if you're really honest, running a bigger business is easier running than a small one.
Yeah.
So in a business of $300 million, you've got 5 or 6 product initiatives. If you mess 2 or 3 of them up, it's okay. If you're in a $10 million business and all your investment is going into one product, it needs to work, right?
Of course, yeah. It's a high level of pressure on that system.
So define success.
Last question, we ask this every time. So what do you know now that you wish you knew 10 years ago? I'm saying 10 years because that's put it into my own context.
Yeah. I wished I had been more confident in myself and my own abilities. If I look back, I just wish I had more conviction when I was younger in who I was, the value I brought, and not be so influenced by what I thought the world wanted.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, cool. Look, thank you very much.